Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for the next item on the agenda, which will be the Fireside Chat with Lewis Stewart and Dr. Stephen Pruitt. Lewis Stewart is the head of strategic initiatives for the developer ecosystem at NVIDIA, and I'm grateful for him taking the time to travel out and visit with us. He is not a stranger to Alabama, and he has been instrumental in doing some incredible work, not only in Alabama, but in many other states around the country. We're excited to hear from him because he brings a unique professional perspective of not only being at NVIDIA, which again is very much front and center in terms of the AI economy, but also he has a background working in the city of Sacramento as well as on the governor's task force around economic development and what it takes to provide the resources for the business community as well as the academic communities in towns like ours. So I'm excited about hearing from him and also the conversation that he'll have with President of the Southern Regional Education Board, Dr. Stephen Pruitt. Dr. Stephen, the most important thing to know about Dr. Pruitt is that he's an Auburn University graduate. But you may find it interesting to know that the SREB works with 16 states around the southern region, and they work from the K through 12 all the way through higher education as well as in workforce development, and runs the scope from anything that deals with educational technology as well as policy and other perspectives. I think overall the main thing to know about SREB is that it plays a critical role in fostering collaboration amongst the states to tackle common educational challenges that we all face and look toward continuous improvement. Looking forward, and more importantly, as well in terms of today's relevance, Dr. Pruitt has been leading the AI task force amongst those 16 states as well, which is a wealth of perspective and experience that we're looking forward to hearing from. You all help me welcome Dr. Pruitt and Lewis, Mr. Stewart.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon. It's great to be on campus at Auburn. I've been here every Saturday. I can't say that those Saturdays were necessarily great to be here, but it's great to be on campus. So SREB, just very quickly, he gave a great overview. Our role as an interstate compact is to work with governors, legislators, higher ed chancellors, folks like Dr. Purcell, to try to bring through the different issues that they're facing. So right now we do have an AI and Education Commission going on, and in that commission, we are looking at AI policy, AI instruction, and skill development. So on that commission, we have we have governors on there all the way through K-12 classroom teachers, college professors, and then a few businesses you may have heard of like Amazon and UPS and Humana. And the idea being, this is a big tsunami of information that's out there. We have 37 states at this point have released some type of guidance on how to approach AI. And they're all having to revise it constantly because it's just an ongoing change, and we're really behind, to be honest. And my hope is that this conversation will help us start to get caught up. So I am thrilled to be here with you today.
It's a pleasure.
So, I guess we'll start with kind of the obvious kind of deal, right? For years, I mean, even when I was a kid, I'd watch the Jetsons, and there was Rosie taking care of everything, and then of course Terminator came along, and we're all scared to death of, so we kind of had this theme going on for a while, and there's always been this, everybody's going to lose their jobs. Well, we know that there are probably going to be some that get lost. So from your perspective and in the work that you're doing, what kinds of jobs do you think, or how's it going to impact jobs in general, but who are the people that are maybe most vulnerable?
So thanks for having me here, and it's good to see everybody here this afternoon. That's a hard question because my belief, if you listen to our CEO's belief and the people that are going to be not replaced but displaced are the people that are not using artificial intelligence. Right? So our CEO proclaimed in front of the whole company, "You're not going to lose your job, but you may lose your job to people that use AI." Right. So therefore, I use ChatGPT, I use Perplexity, I use all AI possible all the time to do my job because I am not trying to be displaced. That's the most basic answer. But the reality is, yes, there will be job loss. Right. World Economic Forum estimates around 53 million jobs lost, but it also estimates 85 million jobs created. Right. So that means that there's jobs and things that haven't been thought of yet, but that because of AI, just like innovation in general, are coming that we just don't know what to train people for, right? We don't know what ideas are going to come out of the use of the tools that we have. And please understand that NVIDIA, right, we're kind of the catalyst. So we're the base layer for a lot of the things that you see today. People use our chips to train their models. OpenAI used our chips to do their stuff. Oracle is using their stuff, our chips to do their next platform. So a lot of the people, a lot of the things that you see out there that are becoming very popular are training on our stuff. So our job is to accelerate what you're able to do, right? So for me, I'm not a researcher. I don't have anything really to accelerate. But using the tools that are out there, I absolutely can do research on an economy that I'm walking into. I can absolutely do research about what's happening at a university way faster than scrolling through websites, taking notes, and doing all that other stuff, right? And so that enables me to then walk into a state like Alabama and have conversations at the state level about economic development in the state, about workforce in the state, because now, you know, in a matter of a couple hours and a few prompts, I actually have a full report on what's happening in the state. Right? And so that's just an example of how I use it and how all of you in your current jobs, you know, just think about what can it enable, right? My son, the youngest, every year he asks me for the latest card. And I explained to him that he doesn't need it for video gaming, right? Because all of our stuff is intended for researchers and solving hard problems. But in his mind, he needs to keep up with the technology because he's going to be a coder one day and he's going to be doing all this stuff one day. However, right now it really is just to play video games, and he does not need the power that's out there.
So one thing that, you know, we talked about that neither of us are really good at script, so I'm already on the second question going off script. Sorry, Danny. So one of the things I think that people are worried about and dealing with are, you know, when you go in and you get that economic report or you're doing that research. I know in our commission, we are constantly asking the question, where's the human in the loop on that? One of the state representatives from Maryland, for instance, shared this story where his daughter was put into the position of using ChatGPT to write a letter as if it were from President Lincoln to the current president about the state of the country. And so the student then had to assume kind of the role of the teacher and had to go in and go, okay, so is this written like someone from the late 1800s? Is this, you know, blah, 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 right? And so it kind of put them into that role because we know that AI hallucination is a real thing. So how do you guys talk about that when you're helping folks implement or integrate? How do y'all talk about that?
Well, so the real answer is the whole company doesn't, right? There's a few individuals that are out talking about this stuff because you know, for us, we try to develop products that have guardrails, right? We're trying to develop products that limit hallucination. But then again, we sell those products and services. Not everybody buys them, right? So you have to think about what is the company's motivation that is buying our stuff? Is it speed to market? Is it really the best in class product and services? What is it, right? So our company really focuses on AI for good. How do we do the best that we can for society? How do we enable and foster good through AI, right? So we're trying to remove some of the fear. So that's why we're out talking about it. That's one thing. But the reality is it actually takes everybody being involved and partaking in what AI tools are out there, and to help build them so that they have less hallucinations and they are less biased. I'll give you a specific example around bias. So I'm doing the research I do, and I'm trying to put together agreements with states, and states that have HBCUs, I add the HBCUs into the model. I started noticing a pattern in ChatGPT. ChatGPT only sees HBCUs as universities that have societal impact. They don't see HBCUs as research institutions, hubs of innovation. And so once I started seeing that pattern, I actually started going in, because I have a custom GPT that I built, going in trying to change that, because I needed the tool to actually work and see the potential and the reality about HBCUs. And so it was actually, a little frustrating, but the human in the loop piece, if you don't read that, if you don't read what's being put out, it just perpetuates what's out there. So I always encourage just everybody to absolutely read through what gets put out, so you don't end up like the council members in Sacramento, where 4 of the 6 council members gave the same end of the speech because you could tell their staff used ChatGPT to write the speech. Anyway, and actually great. The last part of the speech was played on the news by everybody, and none of the news people caught that. that it was maybe one word off.
That's hilarious, actually. So
I'm sorry.
I love that.
I live in Sacramento.
I think
so
it's
make fun of
fantastic.
Sacramento.
I think it's fantastic. So, I mean, clearly we're in this whole new age, right? And there's a significant shift in how we think about things. Here's a question for the crowd real quick. What color is a yield sign? Somebody shout out what color a yield sign is. I hear yellow and I hear red and white. It's red and white and has been since 1971. But yet we have in our head that it's a yellow sign, because that's kind of how we have thought historically. AI makes us see the red and white. We know that in 2030, for the first time in our country's history, we're going to have 52% of Americans that are non-working age and 48% that are working age. So what I'm hearing you saying in your first, when we started, you've got all these folks who aren't going to be replaced as much as displaced. And if we need all of that 48% in the workforce, because if we don't, our social programs and all of that are going to really crash, our economy for that matter. So how do you advise when you're talking to academics, when you're talking to government, on how to start to upskill the people that are currently in those roles?
Yeah, so it's an interesting thing because it's a state-by-state challenge, but understand that what we're trying to address at NVIDIA is really the national call for a sustainable workforce, right? That kind of came to be over the pandemic. You saw all the shortages, you saw everything that's out there. So if we use that as a baseline for our conversation with legislators, federal, state, local, if we use that as the starting point for a conversation with communities out there, we start by just the blunt facts, right? There's no way for the nation to stay #1 in the world economically if we don't have a workforce that is enabled by what's coming next, right? if you go to my state, California, there's no way for California to stay the 5th largest economy if everybody isn't using AI and isn't doing what it needs to do. You can try, but and you can count on AI to fill in the gaps for some of the workforce. But the critical thinking, the creativity, the teamwork, all the elements that humans bring to the equation are desperately needed. And if you don't know how to work alongside AI, it's a problem, because then you kind of let it loose and, you get hallucinations, you get random stuff, right? So really, it's really a blunt conversation with folks, right? And helping people get grounded in the fact that you can't discriminate when you're thinking about the next wave of workforce, right? There's not a way that you can leave populations out of this conversation. So even at NVIDIA, I've been there 4 years. Up until 2 years ago, there wasn't conversations with community colleges. There really wasn't a conversation around workforce. Everything was researchers and engineering, which is fantastic. Allowed the company to do some great stuff. But if you listen to the national, we need a sustainable workforce. If you listen to all the cues that are out there, community colleges are crucial for training the next wave of workforce that's out there. HBCUs are crucial for training the next wave of creators that are out there. And if we're leaving out swaths of population just for access and opportunity for what's next, it's going to affect everybody. And so it's just, us being kind of industry agnostic, being politically agnostic, and just being able to walk in and say, look, we're the base layer. We see what's coming next. You're going to need everybody to make sure this works right. And, it helps, right? Because we're not in trying to tell everybody what the solutions are. We're just trying to walk alongside people to say, hey, look, here's what's coming. Let's try to get there together.
So in 2019, we released the first version of a report we called Unprepared and Unaware, where we tackle this idea that, and this is 2019, so this is pre-COVID, where people are, they're making money, they're going on vacations with their families, they're owning homes, but they are all undereducated in terms of what a future workforce would look like. And then you made a comment that triggered this thought about your son being a coder. So I wonder if we think about this unprepared and unaware, and you talk about the people who currently have IT jobs, the traditional IT jobs, is it as hard a sell to them that they're going to have to upskill, or do they, in general, are on board with that?
So, and actually, I should have said that when you asked the last question, but so it's actually a state by state thing again, just because certain states, super heavy union. And so trying to talk to a state about upskilling IT folks is virtually impossible because you have to match the new skill to a job to whatever. And that is a multi-year process. It's not something that, I guess you could try to use AI to solve, just feeding everything in. But the reality is just state systems in general don't necessarily align with that. Universities, when you talk to universities about this, their first instinct is to go to the IT folks, but this is not an IT thing. Yes, IT people need to know how to use the infrastructure and how to set stuff up, but this is a university-wide thought process shift that needs to happen. When we do these partnerships with states, yes, there's an element of state IT in there because it's necessary. But realistically, when we're talking to the universities, we're talking to the president about, hey, this is a culture shift within the whole university. And the example I always give is the city of San Jose wants to do a digital twin of the city. They don't have anybody, none of their IT folks can build a digital twin. So we partner with San Jose State. We're going to train the students there on how to build a digital twin so that we can actually start creating a university public sector pipeline. So when they build it, then they can support it, move into IT jobs, move into urban planning jobs, whatever, with the city. Great. When I go talk to the people within NVIDIA about building a digital twin, hey, what kind of people do we need to build a digital twin? The first thing they don't say is we need engineers. The second thing they don't say is we need IT people. The literal first thing that these folks told me, we need artists. And I'm like, really? And they're, well, yeah, because they have to design all the user interfaces and whatever else. Oh, got it. And so that's actually hard for NVIDIA to even swallow because remember, engineering and research, that's what the company's built on. So now all of a sudden you're talking about artists and writers and all these other disciplines. So my whole thing is, hey, let's go do university-wide stuff and really talk about how AI is impacting everything that's coming. You know, it's always going to lead to research. It's always going to lead to the IT folks. It's always, everybody's going to be involved, but it goes back to what I said. It's going to take everybody for this next wave that's coming.
So one big takeaway I have out of that is content knowledge is still going to matter. And not everybody being focused on IT or engineering, but actually deep levels of understanding of a lot of different facets of life, right? You agree with that?
Agreed. I mean, from the ethical, responsible side to the super technical side, it all kind of matters at this point, which is why, again, it's going to take kind of everybody moving from just the user space to really be thinking about themselves as contributing to the creation of stuff. And that may lead to new ideas, new startups, new, you know, whatever. But yeah, it's a complete mind shift.
So given your background in government and now the work that you're doing, you know, nobody, I'm sure, knows better than you that this is a challenge when you go in and talk to states because, you know, education is certainly this way, but I would say government is this way. You know, you can have whole conversations and not really say words. They're letters, you know. What might be some advice you would give on strategies that you use to help foster that relationship between industry and government or industry and institution? Because I think in general, that's been a struggle for us as a country for a long time.
So, coming, I'm gonna rewind a little bit. I was recruited out of government to come work at NVIDIA. My background, I'm a studio art major, not an engineer. But I've, over the years, become a really good translator, right? So listen to what somebody's saying, I'm able to communicate it to somebody else effectively. Part of that, my professional career, 13 years in government, learning how government speaks, learning how universities speak, or academia, listening to what industry mostly was complaining about when it came to government, but learning how industry spoke, right? So you walk into these places, and even trying to explain to NVIDIA it's important to speak the language of your customer was hard. Because NVIDIA wants you to talk NVIDIA all the time. Just, you know, NVIDIA product services, NVIDIA language, NVIDIA, great. But in order to get to a conversation, you have to be able to walk into the room and be able to say, hey, look, we understand these are your industries, automotive, military, go down the list, cybersecurity, whatever. We understand the next wave of workforce. We understand that these agencies are involved with this, and help the customer, in this case, the state, understand that you know where they're coming from, right? You understand at least the base layer of what it is they're trying to do. And then it allows the rest of the conversation to happen when they actually hear you saying the stuff that they talk about every day, right? The thing I'm still not good at are all the acronyms that go state to state, but working on that, right? And once you kind of level set with the legislators, with, you know, the agencies, what the conversation is and what it isn't, you know, you see walls start coming down and conversations actually starting, right? Because now people are actually listening to each other and able to have a real substantive conversation around what needs to happen over the next 2 to 5 years, what's coming over the next 10 years, and how to get ready, right? But if we walk in speaking completely different languages and nothing's being translated, there is no conversation that's even possible.
I, I kind of joke all the time that, and we only work with 16, but I need one of those quarterback armbands, so that I can say, okay, I know what this means.
I'm just telling you, man, this is one of the good things about ChatGPT. It allows me to study the night before, so that I can walk into the room ready. So I don't have to wear one of those wristbands. So
I'm going to make sure I put that in my arsenal too.
man.
So going back to this, the stat that I shared earlier about the 52 and 48%, that 48% means that we're going to have to tap into very traditionally underserved populations and do it in a meaningful way. Could you give us some strategies that you've thought about how do we ensure that students and adults who have traditionally been overlooked by our education system and even our workforce system,
Mm-hmm.
how can we really ensure that they have their proper seat at the table?
Well, so that's actually a challenging answer, right? Because I don't think there's one strategy, right? Which again harkens back to this going to take everybody. So like part of our strategy is not to, like I said, not to say that we have the solutions for everything, but literally that we need all the community colleges, all the universities, all the communities of learning to just engage with us, right? Because the stuff that we do, master's, PhD level curriculum, right? We don't teach Python. We don't teach Algebra 3. We don't do that, right? We can help whoever our partner is make it sexy to the younger generation. We can try to figure out partnerships with folks like Minecraft so that coding is built in. We stopped just short of that. The reason I bring up Minecraft is because we stopped just short of that. So if you look at new Minecraft, they use our ray tracing, so it looks incredible now. Minecraft is nothing but a coding game, and why aren't we working with Minecraft to actually build more stuff in so that the students actually see what is possible, right? And so reaching to the popular, so my typical line is we need to get people from being just creators or from being just users to being creators, and trying to help people understand that the tools that they're playing with can actually get them jobs, can actually, and helping people just even translate that layer, so that it becomes a little less of, I'm playing on TikTok to I'm actually building potential generational wealth for my family, and getting people to hear that, getting young people to hear that, getting communities that are historically marginalized to understand that there is potential. It really is about finding a way to create access and opportunity a little bit of everywhere, but meeting people where they are. So that's why there's not really a straightforward answer. Like for us, it literally is a state-by-state strategy, trying to understand what the state is, what the state isn't, who the communities are, how we need to move through the systems. And a lot of that is reliant on our state partners to help guide us through those conversations. Whether that be influencers that are in and around the community, whether that be officials that are part of agencies, whether that be the folks in the schools, wherever it is, we're listening. Because like in Alabama, we were in Birmingham last week, and what came out was, why aren't you guys partnered with Mercedes? Well, I mean, technically we are. Are we? And part of what we're telling schools is, let's help you train up your students so they get the higher paying jobs at Mercedes. Well, that's not what Mercedes is saying. Okay, well, we have 26 of their cars on our campus getting retrofitted for autonomous vehicle driving. So why is it not possible to start training the students on what we know is coming next with Mercedes, so that then it actually translates into new jobs at Mercedes, because now your community understands where Mercedes is actually going, right? And I said last week, I could talk about that publicly because it's a public thing that we're partnering with Mercedes, right? So there's a whole lot of other industry folks that we're working with. Just know that when we walk into your community, there's probably people that we're working with or need to work with. And, even thinking about the assembly line, what that looks like, for folks. How do we make it safer? How do we make it more efficient? How do we help folks learn how to use the robots better that they're working alongside, right? So all these places we're in, we just need to help people understand how to work with AI as opposed to it's taking my job.
So you're telling that story, and a saying that I've said for a long time comes to mind. Education's not rocket science, because rocket science is actually easier. Because we can do a lot of predictions. We know how much hydrogen will make the rocket blow up, right? But when you get into dealing with human beings and long-held beliefs and long-held tradition, because I mean, you mentioned self-driving cars, and my skin crawls a little bit because I'm a control
They're
guy.
fantastic.
I'm sure, but the idea of me, I don't even like my wife to drive. And she's a great driver. It's just, I just don't like for anybody to drive but me. So it's terrifying for me. But so as we sit here on the great great Auburn University here, and we're going to turn and ask some questions from you guys here shortly, but kind of as a little bit of end of our section, what advice would you give administrators and professors and instructors in how they should be integrating AI into their work, their research, but also their classrooms, and that would ultimately lead to people being better prepared?
Yeah. So I'll get there. We hosted 60 university presidents on our campus back in June. R2 universities. Asked them the question, how many of you allow ChatGPT on campus or AI on campus? 80% of those 60 people said that it was banned on their campus, which was shocking to us considering they're sitting at NVIDIA talking about AI. And so listening to the reasons why, all of it was based around fear.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And cheating and plagiarism and whatever. I said the words earlier. AI is a tool that can help expand creativity, that can help enhance teamwork, that can help with critical thinking. Those are all human things that AI can't do, right? And so if you start thinking just about what functions within your organizations you need help with, and you may not think you need help, but trust me, if you start using AI to help you, you will wonder why you weren't using it before, right? Whether that's research, whether that's office work, whatever it is. Even if you're needing to write and you need an outline for something, right? My wife hates it when I get into conversations with ChatGPT because I'll sit there for a couple hours really just going back and forth and getting frustrated, but then cheering and getting happy when something comes out that I need. My kids hate it because I use it as a therapist to talk to them. I literally tell it to act as a therapist. That's a dad of a 21-year-old daughter. And I go through the whole thing with the problem that I'm having. And it actually, gives me the words and emojis to use in a text message. So
I thought about using it for emojis. That's actually a good idea.
I'm just telling you. But just really, really go back and I would challenge you to just really think about not what it's going to hurt or take away, but how can it actually help you? And this is one of those things where really jumping in and being part of what's happening is crucial, right? Sticking your head in the sand and acting like it's the worst thing ever is going to get you left behind, right? And that's just the blunt reality of what's coming. In the next 2 to 5 years, it's going to be an amazing shift. Amazing, no, I don't even know what that means. An amazing shift in innovation, output potential, research potential. And that's just what we see coming based on the speed of the chips that we're pushing out there, right? So if you're not using the stuff that others are developing around it, or you're not integrating, and this is not a shameless plug, but integrating our chips into what it is that you're thinking about, you know, you're a few steps behind already. And if you're really trying to compete as a state, if you're really trying to compete as a university, you need to be on the cutting edge. You need to be using the stuff and thinking about it way differently than it's ever been thought about before.
Well, you may have just given us a new word.
Amazing,
You know,
huh?
yeah, I mean, maybe we can replace ecosystem with that.
Well, yeah.
yeah.
No. So that's funny that you say that, because we talked about it a little bit. So developer ecosystem, head of strategic and niche initiatives for the developer ecosystem, super generic bunch of words. It's a made up title that I have, but it allows me to work with every single business unit within NVIDIA, which is something that doesn't necessarily happen, or all the business units kind of stay in their place. But then also opens doors for me when I'm outside of NVIDIA, right? Because now I can talk about partnerships in a completely different way. And because I have worked with different business units, I can pull in who the partner is, right? So for me, it really is helpful to have that word. But yes, you were right when we sat down. They said in a typical ecosystem, something eats something else. So it's fact.
Well, as a science guy, I just always, every time I hear somebody talking about an ecosystem, I think, okay, who's predator? Who's prey? Somebody's going to get eaten today. Yeah. Just one last comment from me, and then we'll see who has questions. But, you mentioned fear. And so Dr. Purcell is on our commission, and you should tell me if I misread this, but in our first meeting, the meeting really started off with a lot of fear. It was a lot of, and the same thing we're hearing, or that you just said was what we're hearing. We're banning it from campus, or we're doing this. So that's one of the reasons why we have a policy committee that says, what are good policies and how do we align those in K-12 and post-secondary? Because, it could also be horrible if they're allowed to use it in K-12 and they come to college and can't, right? So, but over the course of time, the recognition of importance of ethics was there, but there seemed to be over time more of an excitement of possibilities. But I think you've got to be open to that possibility.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think, just even the question from the last panel about the existence of God and using AI to do that, you really have to be thoughtful in this space. Ethics and responsible AI is crucial. Everybody's ethics and their level of feeling responsible for stuff is different. But again, I'll say it again, it's going to take everybody's input to get AI to do what we need it to do as a society and make sure that it's doing the right thing. Danny kept bringing up cybersecurity earlier, and it's the same thing. If you're not training enough people and people aren't taking enough of the good cybersecurity hacker jobs, there's a whole lot of bad people that know the skills that are taking those jobs and doing bad things. So you want to make sure that you're thinking on the front end around how do you push out thought leaders, experts, workers that are thinking responsibly about how to do good in the world.
Very good. So why don't we open it up? You might have questions that you'd like to ask or a topic you'd like to know more about?
I don't think so.
I think we can hear you.
Okay, I'll try.
Well, I know you well enough to know I know we can hear you. Yes.
I'm from A. So I heard Mr. Stewart speak about potentially doing agreements with states. And my little antennas went up and thought, I wonder what those kind of agreements might entail with other states as we are thinking about ideas for what a next step might look like with Alabama.
Yeah, so great question. So the first such agreement that we have was with the state of California. The reason why we started in California is because our company's been based there for 31 years. I used to work for the state for 10 years, so everybody thought that it was easy. The fact of the matter is, yes, we signed an MOU, but it's not even finished. It's not even close to easy. We're still negotiating with two of the university systems because they're playing politics with the governor. So, but 116 community colleges have jumped on board to do workforce training, right? And that's really the basis of these partnerships that we're doing. How do we partner with the university systems in a state, again, to walk alongside us to train the next wave of workforce? We need industry partners, right? So like I said, we kind of do a survey of what industries are in and around the state that may have training needs of their own or courses that they're teaching. For instance, Synopsys, they do chip design. They pinged me as soon as they saw the MOU with the state, and they're like, well, how do we go to community colleges across the country alongside you teaching chip design? We have all these courses and curriculum. Great. Are there other industry partners that would like to be part of conversations with states that they're not having to again expand access and opportunity? So what does a state partnership look like? It literally is walking in, having a conversation at the governor level. Usually starts around economic development and that kind of stuff. But then pulling in all the academic institutions and saying, hey, look, we need your help. We're additive. We're not taking away anything, but we need you to tell us and look at the curriculum that we have and see how it either can be rolled into curriculum that you have to create micro-credentials, to get ambassadors trained, whatever that is. But at least at minimum, train people up to have the ability to do what it is that's needed to manipulate a GPU, to advance research, to do what that is, right? So those are the type of partnerships that and conversations we're trying to have with states as we go along this. And then there's obviously an infrastructure play. So like Empire AI in New York, which was the Bloomberg Foundation in the state coming up with $400 million to stand up a research infrastructure pod. Great. How do we walk alongside you now to help your researchers at 9 universities do that, right? So we're open to most conversations, most. Some really aren't our space, but again, we're just a puzzle piece.
Very good.
Think you were more successful on a community college? With community colleges than a 4-year college?
The community colleges are oddly enough easier to work with because they have less obstacles when it comes to changing curriculum, creating certificates, but they also impact the most when it comes to reskilling, upskilling. So if you're really trying to go into a state and train the most people possible, there's less resistance at the community college level if you have an understanding the role they play.
Other questions? So those of you that are virtual, you can also submit questions through the Q&A. I assume that you're going over there to look at those, right?
Oh, fantastic. We've answered every question.
Yeah.
You're killing me, Danny. You know that, right? So why NVIDIA is interested in doing this with the states, right? So one is, as I said, we're a base layer for all the innovation that's coming. Jensen's been on Capitol Hill getting asked about workforce. We are enabling a lot of the innovation that's happening today, right? So we have an extreme interest in research and solving hard problems, right? Workforce is a new hard problem that NVIDIA is finding out, right? And so from Jensen down, we're starting to be in these conversations about not only the research side, not only the business side of everything, but really how do we now tackle AI for good, AI for economic development, and AI for climate and sustainability, right? So we're going completely green energy by the end of this year, right? Most other companies are talking about 2030. So renewable energy, I should say. We're looking at the impacts of data centers and the power that we're pushing out to make sure that we are not contributing to, climate change as much, right? So we're working with marine biologists to put data centers underwater and see how it affects the ecosystem, but also how it can be cooled. We're looking at where we can stand up infrastructure to take the most advantage of sun, right? And how we use different ways of cooling the stuff. So, those three things, AI for good, AI for economic development, and AI for climate and sustainability are the reasons why we're walking into these conversations, because it's a state issue, it's a U.S. issue, it's a global issue, right? And so that's my answer to Danny's question.
Well, I think it would be great if all of you would join me in thanking Louis for being with us.
Yeah, I appreciate the ability to be here, and really look forward to figuring out this partnership with the state of Alabama, which hopefully all of you will end up partaking in when it gets rolled out.
And I would encourage all of you to go to sreb.org and click on artificial intelligence under topics. And we're about to release a first set of recommendations and one big thing that's coming by the end of the year is a criteria that institutions can use for a needs assessment of how they're using AI, in hopefully then be able to make better decisions past that. So thank you for being here, and I guess we'll take a little break and come back.